Hey, what's up, everybody? This is the Brew Roots Podcast. We are here in Vermont.
Dun, 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 dun.
Last week's episode featuring Upper Pass was awesome, so thank you for tuning into that episode.
We're still in Vermont.
We're still in Vermont.
Yeah, we never left.
We never left. Yeah, we've been
We
here.
decided we live here now.
Yeah, we've been here for 4 weeks. It's crazy.
It's crazy. We're just living off of berries.
Yeah.
And
Ryan's ski sponsorship. He's now a professional skier.
Yeah.
I believe
100%.
it.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yes.
And he's going to go to the Olympics.
No.
So, Erica, where are we today?
We're at Switchback.
And is that in Burlington proper? Is this technically Burlington?
Yes, it is.
All right, I just want to make sure. So,
Yeah.
And we're in a brewery that they're turning 20 years old. So they're
Yeah.
not legal enough to drink yet,
But real close.
real close.
Yep.
Maybe sneaking them a beer or two just to get them ready.
Yeah.
So who are we with?
We're with Bill.
Hi.
Hey, Bill.
Welcome.
So, Bill, introduce yourself. So what's your role at the brewery?
So I'm the original founder,
Okay.
and that's my role, I guess now. So I started off as the role of absolutely everything except for bookkeeping,
That's a smart one to stay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so it was quite the schedule I had, which was brew packaging, brewing, followed by selling
Oof.
the end of the week, and then sending all my receipts off to the bookkeepers.
So do you sleep more now or back then when you started the brewery?
Same.
Yeah.
Same. Back then I couldn't sleep because I was too busy out in the plant.
Yep.
Now I can't sleep because all I do is worry.
Yeah.
Ugh.
There you go. Great. So it doesn't get better.
20 years, it stays the same.
Stays the same. Awesome.
What I love about Switchback is you know what you're getting with the beer. I think you have some of the most consistent beer that
For
I've
sure.
had. I've been drinking you. I'm 31, so for 10 years.
10,
so
yeah.
half of your life here. And I remember when you could only get it on draft here before the bottles.
Yeah.
So we're going to get into all of that. But I want to know, how did you get into beer and opening a brewery in 2002? People must have looked at you and been like,
What are you doing?
what are you doing?
Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
absolutely true. It is so funny coming from then to now, and
Yeah.
so now I'm the old sage who's seen all this stuff going on. But I had to go to the bank making the case
Yeah.
of exactly what you're saying. Why anyone would think that a brewery could be successful.
Because Catamount had shut down years prior, and Harpoon was the only really...
They weren't even in Vermont yet.
Yeah, not even.
So
We did locally have Magic Hat on
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
ascendancy at the time. So, but yeah, we started the brewery on used equipment, and I had my pick for pennies on the dollar. There were so many bankrupt breweries out there.
wow.
Yeah. So, what made me? Well, it was my profession. So I don't know if this is interesting at all, but. I had a roommate in college, and he was in dental school, his first year of dental school, and one of his friends they were studying was a microbiologist, and they were getting sick of dental school. And
Playing with teeth is gross.
yeah, this was in Ohio, and there's a Budweiser plant in Ohio, and he goes, "Why did I do this to myself? I could be working in that brewery," and I was just sitting in the same room. And I'm pretty sure a light bulb lit above my head in a cartoon fashion, and I'm not kidding. I thought about that and realized that I was in my major, that I had taken some microbiology, and I was like, oh, I really liked it, and poof, I went and I changed my major
Nice.
and directed myself towards this is what I'm going to do.
Nice.
That's exciting. I feel like we don't hear that very often where it's like in college someone decides that, all right, I want to work at a brewery.
Yeah. It was a different time for me. I'm an old man now, and so there weren't the opportunities whatsoever that we would have now to just kind of like walk down the street and say, "Hey, can I get into this?" There wasn't any place to
Yeah.
go.
Do you think that education background helped you in
Starting the brewery? Yeah.
I mean, today we see not as many people getting the education, the science behind it, and just getting the tribal knowledge, whether it's the internet, reading, working in a brewery. Did that help you?
I'm certainly going to say yes because I went through it all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I think in my mind, you touched upon it right in the very beginning, which was our consistency from day one. And that was a target I had in the very beginning, and it paid off well for the company because people did notice.
Yeah.
And I think that came from all of my background, both in education and experience, because I didn't get a job in brewing as a microbiologist. They wouldn't hire me. I wasn't good enough.
Oh.
And so I made bologna.
Okay.
and I was the quality assurance person, for a bologna factory.
Fun.
Yeah. Not as much as you might think.
Oh, okay.
But and it was like every January I would send resumes out to breweries. But like I said, at the time, I was sending resumes out to Pabst and Miller, and
That's all there was.
That's what there was.
Yeah.
And the idea that we were hearing some signs of some small breweries out, but they only had 3 employees, and I knew they didn't need a quality assurance manager.
Right. So then, how did you cut your teeth, so to speak? Were you home brewing, or?
Yeah, and even that was a challenge back then.
Yeah, right.
Finding
Pre-hopped malt.
Yeah, finding the material to
Yeah.
do anything.
Yeah.
You're getting things sent snail mail. Yeah.
Yeah. So, played around with that, and you'd find your sources, but they were pretty bad.
Yeah.
And especially the yeast, which was really just repackaged bread yeast, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, back then, pretty
Yeah.
sure.
But and so that's where I at least experimented and stuff. And I remember like most home brewers, it was the first dark beer I made was the first one. My friends said, "Well, this one's drinkable."
Yeah, right. Yeah. Yep.
Was it just because they like free beer? Or was it
Well,
drinkable?
yeah. Well, everyone choked down anything I made.
Yeah.
Right. But the maltier dark stuff was a bit palatable.
Yeah.
Good.
But I would reach out and I don't know if this is at all interesting, but I got smarter being in corporate business and realized that the folks that would be my boss that I was writing to didn't necessarily have control over when or who they were going to hire all the time.
Yeah.
And so I sent letters not asking for a job, but just asking for advice from the executives at the highest
okay.
end of Bud and Coors. And
Did you get replies?
they did. They
Wow. Wow.
So I had kind of figured out that those guys were sitting at a desk and had time to talk to me, whereas the working guys that would be my real boss were busy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're like, "I don't need anybody," and they toss your resume off the side.
Yeah.
And that's where I got some great info. Both of them said, "Go back to college."
Interesting. For brewing specifically,
For brewing specific, they're like, you got to know even more, and before you can get to our level.
Yeah.
And the Coors fella, he's just I only remember his first name, Lee. And
Well, Lee, if you're listening,
Yeah.
I'm sure
He's
you
a big
are.
fan.
Yeah.
but it was like single spaced, and he sent cover pages from brewing text from the Coors Brewing Library to say,
Oh, that's cool.
he goes, "You'll never find these, but here's how you can reach out to look for them," and a list of all the brewing schools in the world,
Wow.
Wow.
which isn't a very long list.
No.
No, but still, that was pretty cool of him to come back with that information for
Oh,
you.
So what was it in
Amazing.
the United States? Siebel, UC Davis at that point?
It was only UC Davis.
Yeah.
Yeah, Siebel technically was, but they're a seminar college, whereas as the degree granting. So he's talking about, Weinsteffen and Berlin,
Okay.
and Louvain in Belgium and stuff, and then UC Davis was, and I guess Harriet Watt in England. So, and I really wanted to go to a German school, but
Yeah, why not?
But I didn't speak German.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be I don't think as much of a problem now.
I would say I don't
Yeah.
think it is an issue now. I've heard people go there for those
Yeah.
courses now. But
But
so what did you do back then?
So UC Davis.
Okay.
Yeah. So I picked up and carted myself out there, and
Nice.
was not accepted to the school actually.
Oh,
so
no.
that was I just quit my job, headed out there, and picked up prerequisites for a year,
Yeah.
and got to know them, and then applied.
Okay.
And got in. So
Wow.
yeah. So I'm one of those where, it is a very strange thing, and people
Yeah.
people always smile when I go, no, I have a master's degree in beer brewing, and
Yeah.
it's like, what did I do wrong with my life?
Right. Right. But that's cool. Like, you clearly had a passion and you went for it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't think
Yeah.
of
Which
how
is
many people,
impressive.
including myself, I might have just said, like, screw it, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
Back
yeah.
to baloney.
Yeah. No, back to baloney.
But I think everybody's got their own story now. There's other ways,
Yeah.
and
Right.
so there's tons
Yeah.
of folks, right, that just said, I'm going to do this, and they start off,
They just homebrew.
scrubbing floor,
Right. Right.
Yeah.
just
yeah.
to be inside the brewery until someone says, hey, could you do this too? And you did it okay, and so they let you keep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stick around.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
there weren't even breweries available for you to even
No.
do
Do
that,
that,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. It's not
Yeah.
like A&B was like, come on, scrub our floors.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you've seen beer change quite a bit.
Yeah.
When growing up, the domestic cores were kind of like I'm sure,
The beer.
the beers.
Yeah.
When something like, you see Sam Adams, you see Anchor Steam come into play, and you see these beers, and then now to see where it's growing. Did you ever, when you were applying for jobs, did you ever think, we'd have beer in cans like we do?
Poppy beers.
Poppy beer, hazy beer.
Hazy beers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would your professors at UC Davis be pissed if there was hazy beer?
My
right.
professor at Davis says we don't own a filter here
Yeah.
at Switchback and never have. And he actually specifically reached out to me once and said, I don't get this. Why are you doing it? Why is everyone doing it?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I sent him like a big long explanation of why I had done it, and et cetera, and never heard back from him.
Yeah.
Because I know he just shook his head. And
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
understand that, but it's. I don't know about. It's definitely not the variety and the quantity that we've got of the fact that someone can just make a few barrels of beer really and have a business almost.
Yeah.
Of folks coming out to see them.
Right.
To imagine that anyone would want to do that seems hard to believe. But I do know that, even when we were in college, and by the way, I'm so old, it was legal to drink the entire time I was in college.
Nice. Those are the good old days.
Yeah. At least where I live.
Right, right.
But we would seek out little small brands just for fun, and they all tasted essentially the same.
Yeah.
But I remember being at a bar once, and you could get 16 ounces of Robin Hood ale for the price of a 12-ounce Bud, and we were all
there you go.
we were all over that.
Yeah.
What a good name, Robin Hood. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dual meaning right there.
Yeah.
Oh, those are the good old days, because as variety, I know you guys, I don't know how well you know the Midwest, but Cincinnati had Little King's Cream Ale, and they were making an offshoot brand that I discovered in a convenience store, and it was in a 2-liter bottle,
Oh, wow.
a 2-liter glass bottle,
Wow.
and it was called Big Jug, and that sat in the fridge every so often.
Yep. Yep.
So that was I guess that was a version of a growler back then.
Yeah. Never would see anything like that now.
Yeah.
No way.
2 liters of beer being sold? No.
But, yeah, so really the fight for us in the early days was introducing the concept of flavor.
Right. Right.
To the customer, and eventually haze, which was something that definitely not in college. We were practicing how to make things more,
As clear
more
as
beautiful.
possible. Yeah.
Yeah, we did a great experiment. This was one I guided when I was actually teaching at that point, where we had our lab class brew all the same beer, and then everybody treated it differently. So we didn't filter it. We filtered it loosely. We filtered it really prettily, and then we sterile filtered it. Mm-hmm. And then we presented that, and actually presented that we had a master brewers meeting coming to our school there at UC Davis, and the Budweiser people came in, and they were fascinated.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting because the unfiltered was unfiltered and tasted great. The slightly filtered was just barely different. And then the really crystal clear filtered was still only a little bit different, and then the sterile filtered was just stripped of all of its energy.
Yeah.
It was really fascinating how much it changed it.
That is interesting.
Yeah. All right, so we have to take a quick sponsor break. I promise it's going to be quick because this is a lot
So
of fun.
fast.
So take it away, sound guy Ryan, and then we'll be back.
At our local homebrew shop, Beer and Wine Hobby, you can get everything you need to make beer, wine, cider, cheese, and more. Not sure where to start? They have knowledgeable staff there to help. Beer and Wine Hobby is family-owned and located in Danvers, Massachusetts. Visit their website, beer-wine.com, and use our promo code BREWROOTS for 10% off your online order today.
Shirts on Tap is the box subscription service for craft beer lovers. Each month, Shirts on Tap partners up with 7 different breweries from across the country and collaborates on a sweet custom shirt design. We've been teamed up with Shirts on Tap since the inception of the podcast and are proud to announce a new promo code for all of our listeners. To get your first shirt for $5 off, go to the link in our description below and use the promo code. And remember, drink better beer, wear better shirts. And we're back.
Dun, dun, dun.
All right, continue.
Okay, with my origin story, that I don't know how we've fallen into this, but well, interestingly enough, and I can kind of tie it into. So I'm out in Northern California now, coming from Ohio, and suddenly we're going to Master Brewers meetings and hanging out with the folks from Sierra Nevada and Mendocino Brewing and Anchor. And this was all very eye-widening. You know, my dream at the time was just if I could just be in any big brewery, I would be happy. Yeah. And so I had a big transition there where I realized it's like, oh, you could actually...
This could happen.
You could write recipes and do these things. And all of my cohorts in the major were all looking at brew pubs and stuff like that, and being their own brewer.
Yeah.
And I was always looked upon as likely the corporate brewer.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so it's really interesting because I'm the one that did the
did this. Right.
So that's kind of what happened with me is I landed an internship with Budweiser, which was really instructive. It was really well done to see how, you know, they can do what they need to do.
Yeah.
And, I will say this, I got the privilege, because this had to be approved at the highest levels of the union and everything else. They sent me in a rubber suit and I crawled into the beechwood chip tanks to help to clean it out.
Wow.
Clean out the beechwood chip.
What a privilege.
And that had to be approved.
What a privilege.
Wow.
It's amazing. Yeah. You go in there and they've got this like hydraulic fork that you jam into the things, and then they pull out into these torpedoes. You hear about torpedo ale. It's basically the same thing.
Yeah.
So they can steam them and sterilize them before they use them again.
Gotcha.
And so I always have felt like that was one of the great things I've ever done.
Yeah.
Who can say that? 'Cause
probably not many people. Yeah.
And anyone who ever occasionally will say, I'm sure they don't really use beechwood chips. I'm like, oh no, I know exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
The big pile of them. But and straight from there, picked up a job in Kansas City at Boulevard Brewing Company.
Okay.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
So I was their first head brewer.
Cool.
So they had realized, John McDonald realized at the time, the way he put it was that they were making twice as much beer and a quarter as much profit as they thought they would, and that he didn't, they were getting to be like a factory, and he didn't actually know how to run a factory.
Know what to do. Yeah.
So they brought me in, and I was there for 5 years, and interestingly enough, our second best-selling beer was a wheat beer made with locally grown wheat.
Nice.
John was ahead of his time for that.
Yeah,
that
is.
He's like, we're right next to Kansas, and Kansas is a wheat-growing region.
Because why not?
Yeah. We're going to get it from a local farmer. And we had to jump through some hoops to do that. But one time my brewers said to me, because we didn't think much of this wheat beer. It was just kind of boring, kind of a boring little beer. And we loved our pale ale and our porter. And they said, you ought to just drink it straight from the tank. Tastes way better. And I, of course, I knew about Widmer out in the West Coast doing, you know, an unfiltered wheat. And so I just presented to.
You know, maybe we should do that. Yeah.
And we debated that for months of whether or not the folks in Kansas City and the Midwest could accept a funny looking beer.
Yeah.
And it's a great story because we finally gave it a shot and took it out. And the sales staff, we asked them, said, what's happening out there? And they repeated it. They said, they talked to a bartender who said, yeah, I pour it. And someone looks at it and goes, what the hell is that? And I tell them, yeah, it's unfiltered. It's supposed to be that way. And they just shrug their shoulders and drink it.
Sometimes you just need that trusted source.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And, you know, it just took off like crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I always remembered that little story of how it was the same exact beer, but when we stopped filtering it, we liked it.
So
Even more.
Are you the godfather of Haze?
Yeah, right. It almost seems that
Is that
way.
the unofficial title?
Yeah, well, like I said, I'd probably say Widmer's gets credit for me, but, you know, it was that is kind of a funny thing for us to look at.
Yeah.
Because we keep thinking about the fact of maybe we should be letting everyone know our beers are hazy too, because we didn't use that word. We just said we're not filtered.
Yeah.
And I went through, you talk about the, you know, origin stories, is when Switchback first opened, those first couple of years, I was running around trying to explain to the bars what was happening with the beer.
Build a brand, yeah.
Yeah, because they would every now and then get just a plug of yeast and say, you know, something's wrong.
Right.
No, that's how it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
So then what took you from there to
Boulevard,
here?
yeah.
The mountains.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I love Kansas City, and I still to this day always say my job at Boulevard was the best job I ever had.
Yeah.
It was so much fun because I was just responsible for the brewing.
Yeah. Less stress.
Yeah. Just had a great time there, but my personal life, you know, I was doing these 10-hour drives to Colorado to go hiking and stuff.
Oh, yep.
And I just couldn't. It was just killing me. And, so an opportunity came up here in Vermont, which is not a place anyone thinks of most of the time.
Not when you're not from around here.
Yeah. Yeah. But when I looked into it and I saw Burlington's music scene and all the, you know, all that fun culture and just how easy it was to get into the mountains and the skiing, and I said, you know, I think I could
try
make
that.
something out of this.
Yeah.
And I have a real good friend in Connecticut who was nudging me the whole time, saying we should open our own brewery. We should open our own brewery, and and he's now our vice president.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that's how I rolled out here, left brewing temporarily to get out here.
Yeah.
And was making food again, and realized immediately that was a mistake.
No, I made the right choice years ago to get out of this.
Yeah, that was a mistake. The leaving beer was a mistake, but coming to Vermont was not.
Good.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's eventually yada yada yada. We're opening up Switchback.
Yeah.
Switchback. Tell us about the name.
Ooh.
Switchback Trails.
Yeah, names are the hardest thing, and it went months, and I forget what my working name was when I was writing the business plan. But the one day I had visited some friends, and we went down I think to Baltimore to a baseball game and stuff to mess around. And I was driving back to Vermont, and I realized I'd become a Vermonter because as I left the East Coast traffic and all that stuff, all my stress level just started to go away. And I was driving in, I could see the Green Mountain Ridge, and Camel's Hump was off to my left, and I was rolling around ideas for a name at the time, and thinking about things that I associated with Vermont. And right near Camel's Hump, there's a bike race that finishes on the Appalachian Gap, and that's this hideous 20% grade switchbacks right at the end. And I could have thought that thought 100 times and not said switchbacks. But that day, I was like, those switchbacks. And all of a sudden, I was like, boom, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I thought, it doesn't sound like any of my competitors.
No.
and it means something to me, and it means something to skiers.
It means something to Vermont too. It's
And-
something you can definitely associate with.
Yeah.
And I was like, I need more story than that. So and I was like, what does it mean to me? And so it's just almost right away. I said, it's like a metaphor for my life.
Yeah.
Which is, I was trying to be a brewer, but I couldn't get there straight up the mountain. I was off to Bologna, and I was off to school again, and I was like bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
But I kept plugging along, and got there.
Yeah.
So I like to say I used to do a great tour. I'd get applauded. I'd say, I'd say so. So my life, like most people's lives, is not a straight course, but it's the American way, right? If you don't give up, you can get there.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
So remember, this was the tagline. So remember, if you love America, you'll drink Switchback.
Sold.
You needed to look in the camera for that one.
Yeah, right.
That's right. I needed to
Yeah.
play it.
Off to Bologna should be a beer name. I don't know if you need to be.
Yeah.
Just thinking, people would be.
Can we get a smoked beer?
smoked
Hey,
beer.
smoked
Oh,
ham.
yeah.
Just saying.
I want to talk about the smoked beer because I love smoked beer right now. I'm so glad it's making a resurgence. But the core brands when you opened, was it always the pale ale?
The ale that we did, that was the only beer we made.
Yeah.
And that was again, I don't know anything from anything. I'm a brewer primarily, and so I knew I was going to be a terrible marketer, and we continue to be.
Yeah.
But I was focused on what I know best, which was my quality.
Yeah.
And I felt that the best way I could do that would be to focus just on one beer. And I was going to make one unique beer that I got this idea of what I could play with that just wasn't represented out in the marketplace whatsoever, which we can still make that argument right now, even now. Kind of people have bypassed us, and you can talk to a lot of folks of what other beer kind of reminds you of Switchback Ale, and you usually don't get an answer.
It's true.
And so that was my focus, and I kept thinking about Sierra Nevada Pale Ale.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what I want. I want our flagship beer to be that iconic so that when you say the name Switchback, you're thinking about that beer.
You've certainly.
Yeah. You've done that.
You've done that.
Yep.
Yeah. The bottles. I know it took years to get into bottles, but you were draft only.
Yep.
And distributing just through Vermont, right? Or on premise only.
Yeah, on premise only.
Yeah.
We very slowly, poked into New Hampshire and across the lake into New York a little bit, but it was draft only, and that was by plan. It was my plan to introduce ourselves. I knew that I could be more effective if I could just go talk to bars versus trying to make packaging and everything else. And it goes back to me, my quality thing is this was very much even in the business plan, was the longer we could go draft only, the better the bottling equipment would be when we purchased it, which meant that
that's a good point.
the overall quality of the beer would hold up better.
Yeah.
And so I was so proud because I had it in my mind that I was going to have
The best.
the best, and at the time, and still probably is, it's called Krones, is the German company that makes like the best filler.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I always like, yeah, we did it. And
So now why those bottles? Like your bottles are so iconic. You see that bottle shape and you know it's a Switchback Ale.
yeah.
Was that, I assume that was on purpose.
It is. And I think everybody, like, if we talk about the stubby, we started with the 22-ounce bottle, and we did that because we were doing everything by hand, and so that's
Bomber, yeah.
and it slows down production, so it's easier if you're doing everything by hand. But when we went into the six packs, the stubby, we all felt, so at that point I've got my crew, and we're all, it's my employee owners now, right? So I was already treating them that way, where we sat around and we felt like good old stubby bottles kind of fit our personality of how we think of ourselves. We think of ourselves as we're just brewers.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're just brewers. We work our butts off and we make a good product. And it felt just very much like that, like not putting on airs, like we didn't want a fancy bottle or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So And yeah, again, it nobody else is doing it.
No.
We like it, and we would. I had one person tell me that, and I didn't know this, but because there's not a long neck on it, you can chug them faster.
Oh, that's good to know.
We should find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, he explained. He goes, they don't glug along.
Yeah.
Oh, that's true. It's true. Good for parties.
So all four of us are going to chug one real quick.
Yeah.
And the sponsors are going to keep the lights on, and we'll be back, and it's probably going to be really weird.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Are you a solo artist, band, podcaster, or anyone else who needs recording services?
Well, we got a place for you where your vision can become a reality.
Welcome to Small Pond Studios, built by hand with heart and sweat equity by musicians for musicians.
Go to smallpondstudios.io to reach out to get more information. And make sure you let them know that Brew sent you. Hey, Sound Guy Ryan here. Didn't know if you heard, but we're a part of the Hopped Up Network. There you'll find other informative podcasts about beer. So go ahead, follow them on social media, and visit them on their website, hoppedupnetwork.com, to learn more about the people, beer, and breweries from around the country. And until next time, thanks for listening. Cheers.
And we're back.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
We'll do that all day. It's great.
Yeah. So what was beer number 2?
So beer number 2 is, gotta love my naming, Roasted Red.
Yep.
Perfect.
Which, believe it or not, is a red ale that has some roasted malt in it.
Oh, get out.
Nice. Marketing, not your thing. You sure?
Effective, and we know what it is.
Yeah, to this day, though, we have fans that just get all excited about it. I think almost every beer ends up with their group of fans.
Of course.
Even bad beers is going to have someone who's like, I kind of like that. Roasted Red was based on, and this is in some ways fun because I know a lot of you will know, is brand new hop. And actually, one of the hops that comes in Switchback Ale was absolutely brand spanking new. And they said, just see if you like this. And it was Simcoe.
Oh, funny.
And
LOL. It's funny to think that's
brand new.
Yeah. And one of them that I rejected for the aroma because it was too strong for what ale was going to be was Amarillo. So it was an unknown hop, but I still remember I wrote in my brewer's notes, I was like, I just loved the hop, and I was like, must make a beer
with this. Yeah.
So Roasted Red is literally built around Amarillo.
Nice.
So I was like thinking about that and saying, what am I going to pair it with?
Yeah.
And built the whole beer around it.
Do you still do that with beer today?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. You got to look for your little, I like inspirations anyway. It's really tough if it's just like, we just need to make a new one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's more fun if it's like, no, I want to fiddle with this.
I've never felt like that's your identity here.
Mm-hmm.
We just need to brew a beer.
Yeah.
I'm sure at some point you've done something like a pastry stout, but it's not like you're doing that for let's try to be the next big one that's getting into the market. I feel like you make sure you have a damn good product before it comes out.
Yeah.
And actually our third beer was Dooley's Porter, and Dooley was employee number 1.
Oh, nice.
And I'd made Roasted Red because of my inspiration from Amarillo hops, and so I just was, again, you could see why we ended up being employee-owned, because I just turned to him and said, well, what beer would you like to be next? And he goes, I think we need a good porter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, done.
Perfect.
So let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, from 2002 to 2010, were those scary years trying to tell people like, hey, we serve beer, we make beer, did people
almost
get it?
I think almost in a different way, because it was probably around 2005 or 6, probably 2005. We started catching on.
Yeah.
And so from 05 to 10 at least or more, it was just a mad scramble to build more brewery to make more beer.
Yeah.
And in a frustrating way, in that it was all ale production, and
Yeah.
We didn't have time to do any other beers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Were you always in this location, or where was the?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Started off in the middle of it, in 5,000 square feet in the middle, and this is like a 28,000 square foot building. And this is a nice, boring story for you. Is not knowing anything from anything, I'm negotiating with the owners for the lease, and knowing what I knew from Boulevard Brewing and the way we had grown, I said, if we start catching on, I'm going to need more space. Could you let me know if any of my neighbors around me in this building ever are leaving? Because I'd like to be considered. And they said, do you mean you want a right of first refusal? And I just remember going, I don't know what that is, but it sounds like I do.
Yes.
and so that's the fun part of the story is we exercised it every single time until we took over the whole building.
So it's all yours now?
Yeah.
Nice.
So speaking of the building, when did a tasting room open?
Ooh. It was probably somewhere around 2010.
Yeah.
We had a tasting room, and that was a thing. I didn't have a sign for the brewery. It was just a different time back then. Nobody wanted to come visit us.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a sign for 4 years.
That's so weird to think.
And
no one wanted to come visit you?
No, yeah. Nobody thought that was a thing.
Right,
Scary
right.
mountain, man.
Yeah. That was one of the rumors that I didn't mind. The rumors I was an ex-IBM person who had a eureka moment in his basement. That was a big one. But one.
Oh,
of them,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a cool. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
My favorite was that I was a crazy hermit brewer, and nobody could see me. And the beer truck would back up, and I would open a door and shove the beer in the truck and slam it closed.
Yeah, right.
There's a couple of those breweries, I think, in New Hampshire and in Western Mass. That,
Yes.
like,
Yeah.
have that kind
The
of
owners don't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
So people started banging on the door at one point, and it was actually our Vermont Brewers Association had done the great passport program.
Yeah.
And so they're just holding this piece of paper going,
You got to get on this.
and I literally was like the hermit. I was grouchy about it. I'm like, I'm brewing.
Yeah,
I'm
leave me
brewing.
alone.
Yeah.
Go away.
And so the writing was on the wall, and we opened up a really tiny little place where you could get a little 2-ounce sample.
Is that all it was back then? Were you only
Yeah.
allowed samples?
Yeah, so that was a rule.
Okay.
Yeah.
So at what point did that change where you could actually sell your beer and have like a money-making tap room?
That was a good lead-in.
Thank you. I do all right sometimes.
Oh boy, that was sometime around 10 years ago. I think they made a little adjustment, and it was kind of allowing us to have yet another license. So
Lucky you.
yeah, so I think there's like about 4 licenses you can have, and we've got 3 of them. The only one we don't.
You just need one more. You can get them
Yeah.
all.
The liquor one is the only one you don't have?
Yeah, I think so. So once they allowed us as a manufacturer, you're allowed to sell your beer, which is okay. So you don't have to have a retail license.
Okay.
But to pour it, you have to have the license, restaurant,
to do that.
bar.
Yeah.
So
And then you also have to have food as a part of that?
you have to have something, and it has to be more than pretzels or chips.
Well, you
It has
got
to
away
be
with pretzels for a
substantial.
while, didn't you?
Yeah, no, we always had the hot dog.
Okay.
It was the hot dog. That was it. and we still carry it. This plant was built to be a hot dog plant. So we go.
Oh, okay.
Go right back to my bologna.
Bologna
heritage
days, yeah.
story, right?
Full circle.
But the Mackenzie hot dogs, and they still have a little office in the front that for a little longer, but. And they supply those for us, and that gave us enough substance. Yeah.
Community in Vermont.
Yeah.
It's huge. It's almost the bedrock for all breweries, it seems like.
I think so. Yeah.
Why is that?
Yeah. It's cultural for sure. And I remember at our 10-year birthday, I was asked, and I was all over that fact. I said, Vermont has this character to it where people, I had come from, say, brewing in Missouri, where people are suspicious of new things. And here it's just the opposite. It's curiosity and support. And the biggest part is support. Everyone just roots for the little guy roots for the person who's following their passion. And I think they thrive on that and enjoy seeing that. And so it makes it so much easier than in many other places to start something up and say, I'm making this, and there's this openness to, well, I'll try it. So I think that's why beer did so well, especially like we talked a little bit about in the old days, where you're having to convince somebody that there's such a thing as a beer that tastes different than, Bud Miller Coors. That people were open to that. Well, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah. Are there any rules in Vermont that you wish you could change?
Boy. Yeah, you're getting me stuck here, as there's so many of the. It's such an odd.
What would make your job easier?
My job
I guess.
easier. Yeah. You're trying to think of what some of the things that we could not have to do all the time. I guess it's all the hoops we have to jump through to show what we're doing, but I'm not sure how to say this.
Smooth out the process in some way.
Well, yeah, it is difficult because I'm actually been in the business so long, I kind of understand a lot of them. Like there's a frustration you'll have where we can't, if a bar runs out of beer on the weekend, we can't bring them any, right? Because we've got an agreement, and it has to be from the appointed distributor, stuff like that. And the doing anything at a bar, I think that's probably one of the more difficult things. Is you're working closely with the state to prove that you're not bribing anybody to carry your beer and stuff like that. And maybe I'll tell you what would make our personal jobs easier is there's a huge thing about you can't, theoretically and stuff, no one behind a bar can be drunk and serve, right? But they've turned that into you can't have had a sip of any alcohol like that day. And that.
Oh, interesting.
And they have made an adjustment for us, which is nice. But at one time, the interpretation was, as a brewer working out in your thing, if you
gotta try it.
If you're sipping on the just beer in process, it's only half a beer.
Right.
It's like, well, you just consumed some alcohol. You have to go home now. And
wow.
they have adjusted that to recognize that it is part of your work, that you're not
checking quality and stuff.
And a lot of that is just it's the if you want to call it a naivete of understanding what the process is, and just thinking, oh, you guys are just in there, hanging out.
Yeah, right. That's all we do. We just sit and drink all day and hang out.
And you're not allowed to do that. It's like, it's not it. You get us on a summer day when the brew house, it's 107 degrees up there and stuff. Nobody's, they're looking for Gatorade. They're
trust me.
The evolution of Vermont breweries, it seems like the bigger breweries like yourself, when you would go to them, you'd be standing in line to just get beer. Now people are standing in line to get food and beer. I know that you're planning on opening a restaurant, but I mean, how do you focus on producing world-class beer? And then
now there's a restaurant.
Now you need world-class food because people want the best of the best and will settle for nothing less.
Is that what keeps you up at night?
Yeah, and actually, so we've got our big plan because now that we've purchased the building and we're investing in it, and I think you saw my beautiful windows that I waited 13 years for to show off our copper kettles outside.
Yes,
that's part of this investment, but it's very clear that we've gone from not needing a sign to needing world-class food and something interesting to come visit. And we're very fortunate that this crazy building is the building that just keeps on giving because we've
you got lucky, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah,
it's a great production facility because it used to be a foods facility, so it suits us well. But the fact that there's a little bit of land and we're in Burlington proper, kind of anchor in the south end of Burlington, that we're able to do these things. But I think the answer to the, for us is we the core of us will continue on beer, and we're gonna find some good folks to be like, you be the expert for us. Beers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's for me, most of the most successful places, and I know next door at Burlington Beer, they've got an inspired chef that works with the brewer, works alongside the brewery, because you're not really necessarily working together, right? But I think that's where we're going. And
I mean, just being a chef at a brewery to me seems like such a
fun thing.
We were talking about this off air with Amy. Like, it's such a fun thing because breweries, maybe to their credit, maybe not to their credit, all about creativity.
You can inspire each other.
Inspiring each other.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Where if you're just running a restaurant, it might be, we need to have a salad, we need to have this, we need to have that. And
absolutely. And I've had these conversations many times. People used to ask me, like, Switchback Ale, like, how many test batches did you do before you got the finished product? And I said, none. And they're like, wait, how do you do that? And I said, as a brewmaster, at least I taste in my head.
Yeah.
I know my ingredients, and I would refer to it I say, I'm sure a chef, when they're making a new sauce,
they do the same thing.
They know that sauce is about what it's going to come out, and when they get done, it's like, it needed a little more salt, or it needed a little this,
Sure.
but it's close.
Yeah.
And I think a brewer is the same way. We know kind of our ingredient choices, and we know pretty close what we're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
so being around for 20 years in Vermont, where do you see the beer scene going next?
I'd be a fool to predict that.
I know.
Have you been wrong all along the way?
Well, I mean, just how much it's
changed a lot.
Well, you touched upon it in 2002. So get this. In 2002, I found this out after the fact, of course, but there were only 30 new breweries that opened in all of the United States, and 22 closed.
Wow.
So we had a net gain of 8.
That's crazy.
and I found this little chart, and for the first 5 years of our existence, that net gain in the entire United States was never higher than 13.
Wow.
And yeah. And you think about it, I think last year, it was 800 or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so who knew that? And I know there's a lot of folks that look like you had said, we were the counter, and we came in and kind of led the refresh and charge. And I would argue, having been in this, it was the refresh and charge was the 1990s. And this is how I made my case when I was trying to get my first loan for the first business, was the breweries that were closing almost universally deserved to close. Their beer was terrible.
Yep.
and we knew it, and we were out, at least on my end, we'd be drinking and going, how are these guys still in business? And well, eventually they weren't. And I think this new generation is so much different. The quality is it is just on such a different level. And so now you're getting all the, you have to have the base ability to be able to do all this experimentation, right? To make it work.
Yeah.
And so where this is going to go, wow, I don't know, because I know they're playing with, they're modifying yeasts,
thiols.
And so where are we going to go with that, and what beverage is going to come out of that, I think is actually really exciting, because clearly the public with seltzers and cocktails is open to anything anyone comes up with if it tastes good.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you have a seltzer?
No.
Will you ever have a seltzer?
We as a group, we're like, we're brewers.
Yep.
Yep.
But you do have cider and wine, it looks like, on tap. Not yours, but you do have it here.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the licenses here.
Because we have that full license or whatever, we're allowed, we can do that, and that's our, we need some gluten-free stuff. And
Yeah.
So I also want to touch on the very cool, I don't know which of the name, Grodzitsky?
Grodzitsky.
That was kind of close.
Yeah.
So you won this year for that, which is really exciting. Congrats.
Yeah. Katie's love poem.
Yeah. That's really cool. So you have 4 smoked beers on tap right now.
Yeah.
I heard you have 11 in total, though. Is that true?
I would argue we have more than that.
Oh my.
That was probably Amy's bad knowledge, or not knowledge, but bad.
Kudos to trying, Amy.
Yeah, I give her. I think they forget to count. We made some barrel aged smoked beer.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
And some of them are versions
Yeah.
of the other ones, and they forget. I'm like, no, those are new beers. Especially like we did our Blackstrap was my first unusual smoked beer, and I did a high alcohol version of it to go into the bourbon cask, and so that it's clearly a completely different beer.
Yeah.
It made too much, but yeah. So we typically have 4 going at all times.
Really, at all times. That's really cool. I don't think I know of any other brewery that really has that many smoked beers.
No.
Period. I don't think
I know
there's
Notch
anyone.
has 2 usually.
Right,
Yeah.
but that's it.
I'm making the claim because I think I figured out you just can do these things. That no other brewery in the world makes as many smoked beer varieties as we do.
I believe it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just on that statement, you become
Just on
my
that
favorite
statement.
brewery.
Yes.
Yeah, and this actually ties into, we were talking a little bit about the food and the creativity. Is so what I'm doing with it. I got inspired, and so I came up with a rule here. If you can put up with me for 10 years and work here for 10 years, your 10-year anniversary employment reward is an all expenses paid trip to Germany.
Ooh. Nice.
Europe in general, but you have to go to Germany because there's an extremely small brewery in Launau, Germany that nobody knows about that I do, that has got some of the best beer I've ever drank. And at some point in their trip, they have to make a pilgrimage there and sit in their beer garden and drink.
Oh my.
Oh,
Nice.
twist
Wow,
my
that's
arm.
awesome. I know, right? Could do it.
And when Gretchen went there, one of the stops she made was in Bamberg, and she had fallen in love with smoked beer. She said after she left there, all the other beers felt like they were missing something.
Yeah.
And I was like, I was thinking about this because, sours are being well represented, and we've got all the big, bold IPAs and stuff. Everybody's doing all these different things, even spontaneously fermented stuff. No one's doing smoke.
No.
And I call it, giving it the American craft beer treatment, which is we started off traditional with a Märzen and a Helles, and then went rogue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the first one is called this Blackstrap, which is clear, just like the original ale. It's just a flavor idea based on Kansas City barbecue.
Oh.
Nice.
I was thinking
Yum.
about sweet and smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So the
Yeah.
Blackstrap comes from dark brown sugar being put into the beer, and we get that molasses character out of it and stuff. But the big thing for me is on the creativity side is I treat these recipes, I think, more chef-like. So rather than making the beer than smoke being the defining character, smoke is just part of
Just an ingredient.
the component to make it more complex and more interesting.
Yeah.
It ties everything together.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So for instance, Bisou is a French saison, but it's a smoked French saison.
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful.
So you're blending the smoke in, not to make it suddenly be a smoked beer, but to be a saison that's got this extra to it. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I love it. And your tap in general, I mean, you have only one high ABV beer, which is great. Like, I could sit here and have 3 beers and be like, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Love it.
Well, Bill, thanks for doing this today.
Oh, wow.
I feel like we could do
Yeah.
another.
We could do another 5 episodes.
Yeah, you did great, by the way.
Yeah.
Hey.
This was wonderful. You were great.
Now he's getting all defensive. He's like,
No,
oh,
I know. Well, we really went down some paths I didn't expect to. So
Yeah.
Good.
Well, we want people to come to Switchback. Where are you physically located? And yes, we know you can plug it into your GPS.
But still, just listen.
Where are you physically located?
160 Flynn Avenue in Burlington, just down the road from the Subaru dealer.
Oh.
And the world's tallest filing cabinet.
Cabinet.
The world's tallest violin.
Yeah, what's your opinion on that real quick?
Oh, no, that's a great story. And we have an IPA that we named after it.
Nice.
Because that was representative. Oh, and so that got placed the year Switchback opened in 2002.
Was it really? Oh, that's
wow.
so great.
And so it's a wonderful story because you guys came in and you saw all the construction.
Yes.
Well, that road, they're constructing a road. That road is the connector that they're now calling a parkway. But that was designed in 1964. So 58 years ago.
They made this road? They designed the road?
They designed the road, and it's been in red tape bureaucracy ever since. And
What?
That sounds about right.
That's
yeah.
Are you sure it's not
crazy.
Massachusetts? We're not in Massachusetts.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. And so the artist Bryn that did the file cabinet 20 years ago built that file cabinet, and it was originally placed right in the middle. They moved it because the construction was coming in, but it was placed right in the middle of the path
That's awesome.
of the road. And if you were to count, at that time, it was 38 years from 1964, and there's 38 cabinet.
That's hilarious. Yeah, to represent all of the crappy paperwork.
Exactly.
And stupid,
That's
yeah,
actually
that's
really
awesome.
good.
That's really cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now we know.
Now we know. We have to take a picture
Okay,
in
good
front of it, I
story.
guess.
We do. We'll just have to. Awesome.
Yeah, so we want people to go to Switchback Brewing in Burlington, Vermont.
Social media, I assume, Switchback everywhere.
Oh yeah, yep.
Okay.
Now that's Amy's strong point.
Yeah.
We'll talk to her.
We'll talk to her. But we don't have to explain. There's a bunch of great breweries up here. So come up here, stop at Switchback, and enjoy the area. It's awesome. We've been having a blast.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bill, for doing this today.
Wow, thanks guys. Made it easy.
Anytime.
We tried. Cheers.
Cheers.